Let me go across to our guest now joining us, Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, Sushant Sareen, senior fellow of the ORF, both with us. Sushant, let me come to you first up. Russia is being held accountable for, its invasion of Ukraine, several sanctions. The West has come together. Large number of the countries across the world have come together. And it's been booted out of the Human Rights Council as well. Welcome decision. But then what about everybody else is the question that we're asking.
Yeah, that's true, because frankly speaking, the Human Rights Council, is a collection of rogues in many ways when it comes to human rights. Can you imagine China being a member of the Human Rights Council? Can you imagine Pakistan being a member of the Human Rights Council? I could go and keep on naming country after country after country, which are among the worst violators of human rights, and yet they are members of the Human Rights Council. So that is one problem. The second problem is, Shivani, let's get real. Diplomacy, like life, has certain rules, but those rules are meant for the meek and the weak. The strong do what they can and get away with it. The weak suffer what they must. And let us admit it for a fact that whatever else Russia might be, when it comes to diplomatic heft, when it comes to economic heft, Russia simply does not match up to the United States and the Western Bloc. And the Western Bloc and the United States can get away with many things which many other countries in the world cannot, simply because they wield the kind of power they do. It's as simple as that. Now you want to put any spin on it, you want to put any embellishment on it, you want to rave and rant about it, that's your wish. But that's the ugly reality of life in general, and of diplomacy,
especially of diplomacy at this stage. In fact, large questions have been asked always about how neutral and how fair bodies like the UN are. Ashok Sajjanhar, I'm coming to you. This question has come up for the Security Council countless number of times. It has come up for other bodies of the UN, and now it is coming up for the Human Rights Council as well. What is playing out basically is that there's a West hegemony, right, which tells the world on who you should act against, who you should ignore. And that West hegemony is playing out. The hegemony coupled with hypocrisy.
Yes, in a manner of speaking, you're right, Shivani. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I think in a manner of speaking, you are right. If you talk about selectivity, in addition to what you have mentioned about the United States, all these various instances where it has been at the forefront of violating human rights, but it has not been called to question, it has not been reprimanded, let alone any action taken against it. But here we see the case of Russia. The whole world the Western world got together, but you see also the instance in China, where you have more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims who have been incarcerated, who have been put behind bars, and all sorts of oppression, persecution that they have been subjected to. But there are some letters written to the chief of the UNHRC. China comes up with double the number of those letters from countries, and nothing really happens about this. And I think in addition to that, in addition to this selectivity, there is also this question of, what India mentioned and a number of other countries also mentioned, that the whole decision was taken too hurriedly. There was no due process of law, because, even if you are talking about the massacre in Bucha, and many
there are two versions of it, or at least Russia denies those claims.
Yeah, Russia denies those claims, and even what the UN Secretary General during the discussions had mentioned, that there should be an independent, there should be an impartial, there should be, a free and fair investigation that should be conducted, international investigation. Now, no time has been given to that, and the whole issue has been rushed through in this manner.
I would say, Ashok Sajjanhar, sometimes there is, of course, timing is very crucial. Like, you need to take action now, then, do an investigation, and then it takes years and years and nothing really comes of it. The war is on now. I get that point, but then it should be done for everyone. It shouldn't be done only for Russia then.
No, absolutely. But you see, the point here also is that the UN Security Council or wherever it was being discussed, they could have said that, within the next 4 days, 5 days, you have to come up with a decision. It is not that you are putting it on the back burner when you are talking about these investigations.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. What also is standing out, Sushant Sareen, is the pressure that the US especially is putting on India. I mean, recently it said that, dealing with Russia, especially in the defense sector, is not in India's, quote, best interest. That is one of the strongest statements that has come, even though it keeps saying that we respect India's position, but then keeps pressurizing India to cut ties with Russia. At the same time, the other hypocrisy is, on this large issue of gas, Europe is just dilly-dallying.
Yeah, but see, I'll again come back to the same point. The Americans will try and put pressure on us. It is up to us how much we can resist. There is a point at which we will give in to some of the pressure. But there are many areas on which we will try and resist the pressure as much as we can. Ultimately, we will have to see whether our interests are better served by resisting the pressure or yielding to it. But that's on us. That's not on them. I'm not going to force the Americans.
I'm highlighting the hypocrisy in this. That why is it that everybody else can look for their interest, but then there is this whole, a narrative being created that India somehow is not taking the right stand.
Yeah, but that is what hypocrisy and that is what double standards are all about. And that is precisely what India has been trying to point out while trying to resist the pressure. In the areas in which we want to resist the pressure, that is precisely what we are pointing out. That's precisely the argument we are making. The question is not what argument and the righteousness of our argument. The question is our economic, military, industrial strength. How much can we stand up to whatever pressure is going to be brought to bear on us? Our diplomatic strength, how much heft do we have in the world? Ultimately, it's a function of all of that. Everything else is nonsensical, in my view. I'm sorry for being sounding cynical, but that's the reality.
No, fair enough. That's the reality. Diplomacy works in a certain way. There's a real political angle. Everything is there. We just want to shine a light on how hypocritical sometimes these bodies, these actions can be, because they are very selective in who they pick, who they gang up against sometimes. It sounds like ganging up because you don't do it for everybody else. For example, you don't do it for US, you don't do it for China. India has been crying hoarse about Pakistan and its actions, and we see very limited action on that front as well. So that's the hypocrisy I'm talking about. My colleague Maha Siddiqui is also joining us. Maha, we were talking about the pressures that are coming on India, especially from its friend US against its friend Russia. But India again abstained last evening. That is would you say that's a bold statement that India has made, resisting the pressures from both sides actually?
Yes, absolutely, because India also in its explanation of vote pointed out why it's abstaining, and it said that its decision is based both on substance and process. Now, the process point was pointed out by other countries as well. Some of them even, in fact, went against the resolution, voted against the resolution. The process I'll explain to you, Shivani, and then it's for our viewers to really understand what the situation was like and draw their own conclusion. First of all, the UNHRC, according to its rules and procedures, the process is such for suspension of a member that there has to be a record of the violation of human rights, and that should be recorded with evidence. And for that, an independent inquiry is necessary, which India had also called for the previous day before yesterday's resolution on suspension. India had condemned the heinous crimes that were committed in Bucha, and in the same breath said that an independent inquiry is necessary. Now, if you circumvent procedure, and that's what many experts are worried about by yesterday's precedent that has been set, if you circumvent procedure in a multilateral organization, then that sets a bad example for future. The last time a suspension of a member had happened in 2011 was of Libya, and in that case there was a record of the human rights violations that were committed under Gaddafi, and the Council had itself recommended to the UNGA that Libya should be removed from the Human Rights Council. It is after that that step was taken. Yesterday, in the case of Russia, that did not happen.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Maha, in fact, China, not that it has a great record of its own, said exactly this: dealing with the membership of the Human Rights Council in such a way will set new dangerous precedent further intensify confrontation in the field of human rights. So Ashok, Sajjanhar, what's happening is that in all of this high talk, it's really the issue of human rights and the sincerity with which you look at human rights.